The assignment for 1/2 hour was to come up with a community celebration. I'm with a bunch of extroverts and people who are just high energy, excited people. And in a 1/2 hour, we planned this entire celebration where we were going to rename all the streets in town. We came up with a theme. The theme was apples. We renamed all the streets. We had carnival with rides, and all the rides had names that applied to different types of apples or different foods. Oh, we were going to have the celebration with foods with apple in. Just all sorts of things. Kings and queens and parades and everything. We noticed across the room there was a group of 3 guys working, and they worked for about 2 minutes, and they had a piece of paper with 1 black line up. They were absolutely serious. When it got to them, they said, "We're going to have a celebration in our town, and we're going to have a parade." And somebody said, "What's the theme?" The guy who was presenting, the most extroverted of the 3 introverts, looked at the other 2 and he said, "Trains." And they both nodded. And he said, "And we're going to have a parade, and it's going to go from black line now, from one end of town to the other end of town." Covers it. And he said, now these guys had done this assignment the way they thought they were told. They did what they thought they were supposed to do. The rest of us were planning the rest of life as we know it. And it just goes to show how different people take on different things as their responsibility and plan and so on. So the gist of the whole thing was, when you're working with other people, if you know what their style is, or if you can pick up on that, you don't have to look at that person and say, "That person is so doggone lazy. They don't do anything." That's the way they operate sometimes. So anyway, I won't spend any more time on that.
Sorry, I got you sidetracked.
But anyway, all I'm doing now is putting colors in here, and eventually this is going to turn into a beautiful, beautiful painting. People are going to come for miles around, look at this, and say, "Can you imagine?" Okay, here, here, here. I need a little bit down here, huh? Okay. Balance some things out.
Do you ever think of, when you balance the colors, that you give a variety of
Values?
No, sizes?
Oh, I oftentimes do, Frank, but I might not when I'm starting out. I might when I go back in. Let me give you an example. Thank you for mentioning that. As I said earlier, not only sizes but values, and it's really important. For instance, right now, I'm not even sure, but what maybe doing something with that color like this might not be something really worthwhile to hold. That's a relatively heavy value, and so that sort of keeps the eye in here. In fact, I maybe have taken that just a touch too far, because even though my street goes like this, I want the eye to come up around in here a little bit more. That's just the lead in. And so eventually what's going to happen is, as I start adding things like this, let me put a couple of these in. I'll come back in and start adding things. That, of course, close enough to the center that it hasn't hurt anything. I'm going to add a few of those in here too, just some bright colors. Again, keep in mind that as I'm doing this, I'm still thinking of this as an abstract painting. That even though there are people in it, all it is this variety of color dancing around. And eventually that color is going to make some type of statement, in that it's going to be it's going to create something that you can look at, that you can discern. But in the meantime, just in case I want clean water, she says. Okay, I'm going to do a little more work on the sky here. And again, I'm thinking of this as a place that is a fun place to be at. And so for a moment, I'm going to set the microphone down. I will take questions, but I won't talk as much. And if you believe that.
Not for a second.
Okay. I just want to get a couple things done relatively quickly here, and I'm just going to lean into it a little bit.
I'm going to play Vanna.
Okay.
Don't step in front of me now.
Do you not want to talk?
Well, I certainly want to answer questions, but I'm going to spend most of my time just trying to bring this thing along to a point where people can get a little bit better idea of what it really looks like. Little negative stuff up in here. So this honestly looks like a tree.
As long as he's not saying anything, I just want you to understand what his Myers-Briggs really says. He wanted to do art on a line every month.
So he's more ADHD.
That's a good one.
Very good. I don't have to pay for that diagnosis, do I? Okay, I'm going to get in with the color here of the building. I'm just actually going to change the color of this building. You know, when I use a lot of colors, the dilemma that I have is that that I start running out of colors. Can you believe that?
Right on the table there, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, I do mix on the table. I'm balking here because I need a cool color. And I'm going to get up in here with this color. And I've got a name in here. This place is called Shrimps. And I'm going to put that in there.
Are you painting like Key West, or what are you actually?
You know, that's one of the possibilities. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I didn't mean that to be a smart aleck answer, but it is a Caribbean type scene, yes. Mhm. Exactly. I want to change my color in here, decidedly. And then I'm going to just bring that down here because I've got a couple people. Now, I'm just going to finish one building here because that's all I'm going to have time for. And try to make sense of just this little area here.
I noticed you like to use a lot of different colors so that they bleed together.
Yeah. Yes.
That's marvelous.
I'm going to take a small brush and just do a little work. Get a little detail in here. And then I'm going to put some color back behind in here. And bring this color in here. That's skip screen. And I'm going to have to mix a little color here for a face here. I've got a person up there. I'm going to put a bunch of these people in just so that you can see what's going on. I've got some people in here, people here. Again, all I'm doing is having fun with this, and the idea is to, I like it when people purchase these and say, you know, this looks like a place that I'd like to be. And so what I've been doing lately is making all of my customers promise when they purchase these paintings that every time they look at them throughout the day, they will take about a 30-second hiatus, a little vacation, put themselves into this spot, and just sort of make up their own little story about what's going on and what they're doing here and how much fun they're having, sort of forget about whatever is going on in their lives and their work, and just take a little break and go to this spot. This could be your happy place.
Dick,
Yes?
since you're using colors straight from the palette and bright, intense colors, are you thinking in terms of using neutrals at all, or is it just your style not to get into neutrals?
It's pretty much my style not to get into it. Now, having said that, when I started talking about balance, tonight I was going to focus primarily on balance with respect to color. I tried to think of balance with respect to, as dumb as it sounds, with respect to my values, but I'm essentially a high contrast painter, if you will. I also tried to think of it, I tried to remember to put some soft edges in with my hard edges. Let me just talk about soft and hard edges and a couple other things. If I want dominance in edges, this is primarily a hard edge painting. There's a hard edge dominance, so that you can determine, you know, sort of the rigidity of the painting. What I hope to do, but I don't always do, is to take a look at my hard edges where they are and see are they all in one area or are they somewhat balanced. Take a look at my soft edges, and are they all in one area, or have I balanced my soft edges? In other words, I want one of those to be dominant, but the soft edges should be balanced and the hard edges to a degree. So it doesn't, what I'm trying to stay away from is something that looks like two different paintings. This side is warm and this side is cool. This side is very hard and this side is soft. This side is blah, 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 blah. This side is straight lines, this side is all curved lines, and so on and so forth. And so balance means that you put the colors, the softness, the hardness, the this and the that, balanced throughout, even though one of those concepts or one of those elements is dominant within the composition. Okay? Right, Frank?
Yeah.
I always go back to the teacher, you know. The only
So
reason
in other words, you have them all really moving around in the painting instead of just in one spot.
Exactly. Exactly. So right now I'm spending a lot of time on just putting colors in. Boom, boom, boom. You notice that I'm starting to get to smaller things. Oh, I said I was going to try to concentrate on this area, didn't I? I'm just going to make sure that I put a couple little colors in that area. The eye is going to go through there. That's another thing that I think about in the abstract. If I'm going to guide the eye through here, and I'm using really intense colors, you know, I better have something in there that shows those colors as opposed to just having them out here, so that when people are making this trip, they see this trip as being part of the entire composition. And so That's part of what I'm doing. I will sometimes just go through, watch what I'm going to do here. Well, you didn't see that, did you? I'm just going to pick out a red here. What kind of red? Red. I just picked up some paint from Cheap Joe's, and what determined which colors I ordered was the price. If Poppy and Red Hot Mama were cheaper than some other reds, those are the ones I ordered. I figured, you know, if I want them a little lighter or darker or oranger, I'll just mix them with something. It's not a big deal. And so they had some, you know, $4.95 or whatever tubes, and that's what I got. But you see, I've now put some of that red around. At least it gets me going on it. When I add my darks is when I will sometimes pick up some of the harder edges. For instance, I'm just going to put some little shadows and little lines in here. I'm going to harden this edge just a little bit. I'll just try to make a little bit of sense out of this before we're...
Is your paper wet at all right now?
No, it's wet inside, but not on the surface. What I like to do when I'm painting is, the reason I wet both sides of my paper is I like to keep it so if I want the surface wet, now it's wet on the bottom, it's wet in the middle. So if I want to have an area wet, I literally have to touch it like that, and it'll stay wet now for quite a while because that water isn't going to get sucked into the middle and dry off quickly. The middle is already wet, and so that'll stay nice and wet for a long time. The other thing that happens is when you're painting on dry paper and you pick up some of this bright pigment and touch it to the paper, it just sucks right down into the paper, and it is there right now, and you're not going to get some of it off. If I wet the paper and start applying pigment, it will essentially lay on the surface for a long time. And if, as I'm going through the process, I want to make some changes, I can go in and lift a lot of the pigment off and soften it or take it off, and it hasn't really drawn in and set. So it really buys you a lot of time if you wet your paper. Okay, I'm going to put a couple quickie little things in here. I'm going to put a couple shutters in here because these windows all have to have shutters. It's a place where they actually get used. Now, having talked